Hi, I'm Mike Vegas. We're at Nice Rack Canada talking to Robb Cappelletto from the Robb Cappelletto Group. We recently built a new pedal board for Robb Cappelletto. It's a rather interesting pedal board for a jazz player, embracing a lot of technology that many jazz players aren't native to embracing at first.
So with the rigs that I had kind of thrown together for myself and the first rig you built me a few years ago, I really only had three different pedals on it. I had a two-stage boost, and then we had a Strymon reverb and trem, the Flint on it, and the L cap. And with that rig, I was getting all my sounds out of it, but I was turning knobs with my feet a lot. Like if you remember, we had like the MXR big turnable knobs on everything, and it's like there's only three things on the board that I'm using in a variety of combinations, but it's like consistently turning knobs with my feet in addition to turning pedals on and off while trying to play at the same time, and it got a little crazy.
So by embracing the Strifecta, the big 3 by Strymon, bringing MIDI control over those pedals, you were able to get a lot more instant recall over scenes that you were looking for in the sonic architecture, so you could focus more on the expression and the playing with the hardware that you're using rather than making the hardware work so that you could get the work done.
Right, yeah, like with the old rig, I found a lot of times just by nature of what happens on stage, I was trying to access a sound and maybe not turning a knob quite enough or something, so it's like I was always getting close to the sound I wanted, but not always exactly the sound that I wanted. And what's interesting is like when I actually mapped it out in the mastermind and using these pedals, and I made patches for exactly what everything needed to do in every song, the same set that I was getting through with 3 pedals and turning things, it's like I actually needed 21 or 22 different presets for to get exactly those sounds, exactly the right delay time, delay mix, tremolo mix, or like which tremolo mode I wanted to use, etc., etc., etc. So it's definitely made life a lot easier on stage, just being able to instantly access exactly the sound that I needed instead of having to juggle for kind of the sound that works for that part. So
this has obviously made some positive impacts in your live performances. I know that you also do a lot of studio work, not just on your own, but for other artists and producers. Right. How has this rig come to impact your recording environment, which is obviously a significantly different workflow than the live environment would present?
Right. A lot of the studio work I do is in a variety of styles, whether I'm working with keys and crates and doing more EDM stuff, or working with reverse and doing hip-hop things. And especially when I'm working with producers in the studio, when they have a reference guitar tone that they play me, we'll go in the studio and it's like, here's the song we're creating, but these are the guitar tones the artist likes. Just having these pedals readily available, and I'm glad you talked me out of wanting to rack mount all the pedals, right? Because just being in the studio and having all of this stuff readily available and having essentially every modulation effect, every kind of delay effect, every kind of reverb, and then knowing how to manipulate those. When a producer plays me a reference track, it's like literally seconds to get pretty much exactly the sound that's on the track because everything's at my disposal here, which is not how I use this rig live, but in the studio it's been a whole other kind of benefit to just have all this stuff in front of your face and like high quality sounds, no weird buzzes or hisses or anything out of phase when you're going for certain weird things, and it's like it's great, just easy to access everything.
With each Nice Rack Canada system that we build, we try to contour the user interactivity with the system to specifically suit what that player needs to do in either their live performances or recording performances. One of Robb's favorite pedals was the ZVEX Super Duper 2-in-1 that provides a really, really nice load to the pickups on the front end of the rig and helps him kind of hit the front end of the amp with the gain structure that he really likes. That pedal doesn't have MIDI control over it, but by instituting 2 switching relays in a rehouse of the pedal, we were able to use the Mastermind LT7's built-in function switching to control the Super Duper 2-in-1, which has been rehoused here in a Nice Rack Canada enclosure.
With, I guess at the end of the day, for more than 10 years, I was a guitar cable straight into the amp person. And when I started adding effects, I'm just really picky about how everything I plug into just drags a little bit on the clean tone. So the goal with every rig, the last rig that we did and with this one, is to get, I guess, the maximum number of sounds from the minimum number of components, just so that there's not so many pedals being plugged into and the least amount of cabling relative to what the rig can accomplish. So really in this rig, the only thing that's going between the guitar and the amp's input is the Super Duper 2-in-1 and the pre-section of the Mobius, which if it's not running an effect, I just have set to a buffer. So we're using the Mobius for modulation and as a buffer when modulation is not being used. And everything else is just in the effects loop, so the timeline, the Big Sky, and the tuner are all running in the JP2C effects loop.
It's a great way to exploit the built-in technology within each component and add the least amount of componentry to the signal path for the absolute cleanest path while leaving no feature unused in any one of the devices.
Right, yeah, everything's on all the time in some capacity, right? Even when the Big Sky's in bypass, it's buffering the effects loop a little bit extra just to make up for the cable run. And yeah, the expression pedal that we did here is assignable to any feature of any of the pedals. I typically use it for delay mix because that would be an extra setting I would have to make for anything. So now I just have it normal in the up position and kind of my maximum setting in the down position. And I guess the same thing goes with, what would you call the extra switcher you've added to the
This
LT
is an
here?
external switch that's connected to the external switch input on the MIDI controller, and these two buttons can be assigned on a global basis or on a per preset basis. How are you assigning those two buttons, Rob?
So still improvising for most of each gig. Well, I have made specific parts that need to, rather specific patches that provide the sound for certain parts of certain songs, and those need to be set. As an improvising player, I still want to be able to modify things on the fly. So with the expression, I generally globally have it set to add more delay, and then with these, this is set for the second half of the Super Duper, so I can add a gain boost to any patch. And I have this set to turn on the EQ on the JP2C, so I can add a mid boost to any patch. So regardless of how it's dialed, there's always more mids available if I need to play a melody that has to stick out. There's always more gain available if I want more gain. Always more delay available to any patch.
So you have global instant access to your two favorite parameters that can also be assigned to an overall system
Right.
preset.
Okay, so some multi-channel amps have an overall master. The JP2C, which I picked just because I love the way it sounds, but also because it's completely MIDI controllable, so the switcher is accessing all the parameters of the amp. Like if we hit this, the channel changes on the amp and EQ just turned on. If we go back to clean, the EQ turns off, and it's all automated. One of the things about this amp is it has 3 channels, 2 overdrive channels and 1 clean channel, but no overall master for the amp. So when I get all the channels set into relative balance with each other, and I get to a gig and I'm too quiet or more often too loud, and I have to turn everything down, it requires going back and forth a bunch of times between 3 channels trying to balance them all again. So this is a master volume in the effects loop of the amp. So once the channels have been balanced, I can just turn the whole amp down with this. And then should I not need it, we have a switch under here that just bypasses this knob, so it's totally out of the circuit.
This particular box, by the logo you can see, was made by Nice Rack Canada. This box we refer to as the I/O, or the in and out connections box, that we build into every system. And anything that circuit-wise that we need to add to a system to make the functionality work specifically for what that player is looking for, that's where we put the secret sauce for everyone's unique system, goes into that particular box.
Yeah, I mean, like compared to, it looks the same as the box that's on my other board, but we've added, functionality that was specific to this board. Obviously, because we're sending MIDI, we needed a different cable there.
We also incorporated a MIDI in so that when you're tracking, you can have your tracks do your program changes for you in the system as well, allowing you to focus more on the part that you're perhaps sight reading from at that point in time.
Right, or even live for an artist that's running a show computer with backing tracks. It's like in Ableton Live or whatever, can just set up all the effects changes in the show and literally leave the pedal board backstage and everything just happens on its own.
So this system requires a MIDI controller to transmit all the MIDI commands to the MIDI receiving devices. The controller that we spec'd for the system, based upon its footprint and the capability, the features that it has built into it, is the Mastermind LT7 by RJM Music. This controller has definitely become a standard setter in the music industry for the last couple of years in its user functionality, the ability to create multiple command strings per instant access switch, its interactivity with backing tracks either as a controller or as a slave device, and also what helps a lot of artists who are not using backing tracks is the set listing feature within this controller, that you can organize all your presets into a set list and advance from one song to the next using the bank up and bank down buttons, and then simply scroll through the song at that point in time. I've seen Rob do performances where minus a set list was actually using his controller as the set list. Right. As he was hitting next, he knows exactly what song he's playing, and the rig is following along doing what he needs it to do at that point in time, as compared to some artists who might read their set list, go to their pedal board, start trying to remember all their mechanical cues. In this case, the set list is already ready to go for you, exactly where you need the rig to be when you get to that point in the set list.
The other thing too that I remember you were mentioning to me when we were putting the rig together is that in each, because you can organize patches into songs. So like I scroll through it and it says the song title, and then it has 1, 2, 3, 4, the 4 main sounds that I use in that song. And then we can organize those into the set list as Mike was saying. But what's cool about that is you can assign tempos to songs. So if you're playing, a gig in the air, as they say, without any click tracks or without any backing tracks, there's none of this stage nerves. You count in a song too fast, or you count in a ballad too slow because you're thinking it's a slow tune or something. It's like you can assign the tempo to each song. My tap tempo light is flashing at the right speed of the song, so I just look down, I know exactly what the tempo should be rather than what I feel it is because I'm, got the energy going on stage or something.
And if you're not going with a count in, that can give you a visual count as well. For
sure. Yep.
I'm glad this has been a wonderful addition to your sessions and to other artist sessions that lead to a faster, more productive workflow.
For sure. And I'm just really OCD about my rig looking very neat, and you seem to be the neatest. So
I think look is good, but sound is better.
Yep.